Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton. Time for another edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. Always good to talk recruiting. And Gerry, it's always good to talk about our sponsor for the Recruiting Breakdown. That's Mark Saunders.
Absolutely. He's the only insurance agent you'll need, and he's a Texas alum when it comes to protecting all your stuff. Wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects all of it, everything? I got some great news for you. That's Texas alum and Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders. He serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and even an ATV if you got one of those. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. With over 35 years of experience in the industry, Mark Saunders is all you'll need. You'll be in great hands with Mark Saunders. Again, Austin or Round Rock area, the entire state of Texas. Give Texas alum Mark Saunders a call, 512-218-8571. You'll be in great hands. Let's call them Jerry Rice hands on a slant over the middle.
Well, since we're a Texas show, Jerry, let's call them Jordan Shipley hands. But regardless, we're going to talk about hands on this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown because we're talking tight ends and we're talking Mark Bowman. Jerry, I want to start with this. The Brock Bowers comps are in full force with Mark Bowman. Probably not fair to him to compare him to a guy that was a great college tight end and a first-round pick and has been awesome, at least through 1 year in the NFL. But, Jerry, you've seen a lot of really good tight end prospects in your time doing this. How high does Mark Bowman rank on that list for you?
I think he's up there, but especially considering, look, he's a 27 that's reclassed to 26. So I got to think about him in terms of he's a sophomore on a football field, right? So he is really talented, and here's what makes him good. As this tight end, these highlights are tremendous, right? The one-handed grab, right, on a corner route, then the ability to run away and take it to the house. But it's his physicality and willing to be a blocker too. I mean, he's a complete player. He can line up in line. Here he is lining up in the slot. He's a good route runner, right? Hands away, arms away, extended, hands away from his body. Snatches the ball out of the air, then he can turn and accelerate up the field. He's a bigger frame guy than Brock Bowers. That's the one thing I'll say. Brock Bowers, 6'4", 230, 235. Mark Bowman's seeing him last weekend. He's a bigger frame guy. He's closing in on 6'5". I think he's got a little bit more on that frame to where that's a great play right there, the body control. I think he may be a guy that ends up being 250, right? A little bit bigger guy, 255 even. So he's going to draw those comparisons. I get it. He's playing in California. Brock Bowers is up from Napa, maybe the best player to ever come out of Napa Valley in my years doing this. So I get it. They're SoCal guys. They're good after the catch at tight end. They have great body control. But I think he's a bigger frame guy, but a tremendous prospect. And there's a reason everybody in the country is trying to give that play right there. Just a willingness. He's playing, I think that's Anaheim Servite maybe they're playing. Just a willingness to be physical along with the pass receiving skills is what makes him different, and then his ability after the catch.
Jerry, if you think about the tight end Steve Sarkisian has had in his career, and I think this puts into perspective the kind of prospect that Mark Bowman is. You know, he had Austin Seferian-Jenkins when he was at Washington. He was the interim offensive coordinator for one game with O.J. Howard at Alabama. And obviously he's had, look, Jatavian Sanders is an NFL tight end. Gunnar Helm's going to be an NFL tight end. Even if you want to get technical, Jared Wiley, who Sark had for 1 year, is an NFL tight end. But Sark hasn't had a guy that was this dynamic, that was this ready to go right off the bat. And you think about it, look, Gunnar Helm needed to develop physically. Jatavian Sanders had to learn the position. It's hard for me to remember, Jerry, a guy that at that position that was this ready to go the minute he sets foot on campus.
Yeah, I think so. And look, he's at modern day. And we're going to get into who Mark Bowman is and his family in a second as we profile Mark Bowman today. But you're right. And look, he's at one of the best high school programs in the country. He is extremely well coached, right? They have a great off-season program. And he is, again, so he is maximizing his high school ability at modern day, right? And he's doing it quickly because this is sophomore year stuff now. He's going to reclass. So his junior year will be his last year in high school next year. But you don't see many guys, Jeff, to your point, they're that good of route runners. They're that willing of blockers that understand leverage, that can play in space like he can, that can line up in the slot, that can line up in line. I mean, this is a guy who obviously has football intelligence, but he is being really well developed modern day. Catching passes from Matt Leinert's kid, by the way. So, he plays with every player on this offense is a Division I player. And I think 9 or 10 of them are going to be Power 4 players. So he plays in a program that demands excellence, number one high school team in the country, and they're developing him as well.
Gerry, let's talk about Mark Bowman. Let's get into the profile and talk about his ties to Austin, to Central Texas. I know you've done some digging on this because I don't think anybody's clearly reported exactly what the ties are. So what got Mark Bowman and his family interested in Texas?
Yeah, it's interesting. So his father was born in Louisville, Texas, up in DFW area, and I think moved to Colorado when he was 6 or 7. He ended up growing up in Colorado, played at Colorado State. He has family ties in the state of Texas. Mr. Bowman, we're talking about. He has intimate knowledge of Texas football, like almost institutional knowledge. Like he knows the best players from Texas in the 60s and 70s, right? So he grew up with some Texas ties to him. You just don't research that. That means you've watched a lot of Texas football, and there's a reason you watch a lot of Texas football. Does that mean Mark Bowman's going to Texas? No, we'll get to that here and later. But so the other interesting thing there is, so he has obviously the ties from Texas, was born in the DFW area. When it became apparent that Mark was going to be a big-time football player, along with the COVID timeline, right, they were looking at places to move out of Colorado. And they looked at 3 schools from what I was told this weekend: Mater Dei, South Lake Carroll, and Austin Westlake. So they looked at returning to Texas at multiple places, either in the Hill Country or in DFW area. So there's obviously a liking for Texas and a respect for the state of Texas football there. So if you're a Texas fan, when this kid reclassed from 27 to 26, the day reclassed, I said on ontexasfootball.com and here on video that I was hearing this would come down to Texas and Georgia. And I think we're finding the reasons why. Now, I'm not going to discount Oregon. We'll get into his recruitment in a second. He's got 5 official visits, but there's a reason that Texas remains very high in this recruitment. They've been to Austin multiple times now for multi-day visits. So there's some ties to Texas that have carried over through the father's side. And those ties have got Mark Bowman and his family to the campus in Austin multiple times.
Gerry, he's also got a couple tie to Texas currently. We saw him actually as he was leaving the facility and everybody was getting their interviews with him. Brandon Baker walked him and his family out of the facility. Brandon Baker's a Mater Dei guy. Even in that tight end room, Spencer Shannon went to Mater Dei. So there's some Mater Dei ties. Look, we know Sark has recruited that probably since he got on Pete Carroll's staff as a graduate assistant. Sark's been recruiting at Mater Dei. So just a lot of familiarity, Gerry, in the Texas program with Mark Bowman, with that Mater Dei program.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great point that there's multiple Mater Dei kids on the Texas team. Look, and they're recruiting other guys. Caden Dixon-Wyatt, the wide receiver, scheduled for an official visit June 13th. That was the first school Texas went to in January when they got out on the road, because they started out west and knocked out west, and then they came back east into Texas and east into the SEC region. So Mater Dei is a school that Texas coaches visited multiple times in January, as much as they could. And there's a lot of ties to Mater Dei through Steve Sarkisian. Chris Jackson played at Mater Dei, right? Johnny Nanson's recruited Mater Dei for years and years and years. So there are a lot of ties to that school, to that area. And when that happens, you normally have a lot of people that say positive things about the university. And Brandon Baker obviously coming in, redshirting, and now being number 1 at right tackle. Spencer Shannon, right now he's number 1 at tight end while Jordan Washington's dinged up. But was, let's just say, redshirting and developed, and he's a number 2 tight end. I mean, those guys are coming in and playing as well. So I think there's a lot of things going for Texas on the Mark Bowman front.
Gerry, let's look at some of the other schools. Like you said, Texas seems to have been the one constant in the recruitment, whether it's Texas and Georgia or Texas and Oregon. Let's talk about Georgia. And obviously the Brock Bowers comps get even stronger when you talk about Georgia being interested in Mark Bowman.
Yeah, for sure. And look, what's interesting to me about this is different offensive coordinators now, different quarterbacks now, but Georgia still has the same selling points because Brock Bowers was a player at Georgia and was a multi-year All-American and one of the best tight ends we've seen in college football in a while. And there are similarities in their game, so it's easy to go back to the tape of how Brock Bowers was used at Georgia. But again, there's some changes that have happened there too. But I think he's been on campus there multiple times. There's a liking for Athens as a college town, the Georgia program, obviously. So again, I really think that Texas and Georgia are going to remain the top two here. But he does have official visits to Alabama, May 30th, June 2nd. Then he goes to Texas the 6th through 8th. Then he goes to Georgia the 13th through 15th, USC midweek, which they're not giving up yet, and then Oregon the 20th through 22nd. I think right now Oregon's the third team, and we don't want to discount Dan Lanning and the Ducks. But the question is, are all those schools going to be able to overcome the scheme at Texas and the scheme at Georgia and how Brock Bowers was used at Georgia? That's what the other schools are up against. Now, Kalen DeBoer has he has a song there too, right, at Alabama with his scheme. So those schools have to overcome, I think, that are recruiting against Georgia and Texas, Sark's scheme, the tight end success at Texas, and the tight ends success at Georgia under Kirby Smart. And that's a tall task for the competition.
So, Jerry, if you're handicapping this, Lincoln Riley did have an NFL tight end in Mark Andrews at Oklahoma. It's been topsy-turvy for him, to say the least, at USC. But if you're going with one of those West Coast programs, you think Oregon's the one that could probably sneak in there?
I think Oregon right now. I do. But, look, I think USC's got a little more – has growing momentum again in the home state a little bit. But I think right now, Oregon, yes. I would still say this. I would probably go what's interesting about the recruitment, Jeff, is people on the West Coast will swear that Mark Bowman's going to end up at Georgia. Once you move a little east, those people in our industry aren't as convinced of that. So let's throw it at 40-40 for Texas and Georgia right now and 20 for the rest of the field, and we'll see what happens.
That's probably a pretty good way to handicap it. Jerry, we'll get into some more tight end talk in general with Texas. But before we do that, one more time, Jerry, let everybody know about our sponsor here on the Recruiting Breakdown. That's Mark Saunders.
Yeah, when it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? I got your guy, Texas alum and Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders. He serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas, the Lone Star State. He's got you covered. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. I guarantee you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders and his over 35 years of experience.
David Thomas like hands, Jerry.
David Thomas. That's it, Jeff. There you go.
Since we are talking about tight ends, Jerry, Caden Prothro was on campus over the weekend. Here's before we get into specific guys, this question fascinates me about the position. In your opinion, is it a 1 or 2 tight end class? And if Texas finds a portal tight end in the spring window and that player is a multiple year player, does that change the math at all?
I do. I think it's a great point, Jeff. So in the portal, if it's a 1-year player, I don't think it changes the math. If it's a 2-year player, then I do think it could change that math. Yes. I think right now Texas will take 2 tight ends if it's the right guys. But I think I lean to it being a 1 tight end class because I just don't think you're going to be able to reel in multiple guys on the list for Texas. I think see these guys going their separate ways, right? So you have Mark Bowman, you have Caden Prothro, who you mentioned, who's coming in to Texas June 20th. He was here over the weekend. His first visit to Texas, great looking kid in person. Yeah. Not more of that sleek basketball build that will frame out, kind of like Zena on the defensive end side as far as a frame.
On a first take from a distance, he kind of reminds you of Diabell. Like if you didn't know the two distinctly, real similar frames.
Yeah, and so he's going to be a 6'5", 250-pound kid over time. Right now, he's probably 6'5", 215, right? So he's got Georgia, their big weekend. Obviously, most people will tell you Georgia's the favorite. We've been down this road. Georgia gets the majority of their kids. Texas did win out for Justice Terry late. But Georgia, May 30th through June 2nd. Then he goes to Bama, June 6th through 8th. Again, Georgia, Bama, Texas, both right there getting visits from Mark Bowman, Caden Prothro. It's just something out there. Auburn and Florida also get official visits. Florida has a June 13th through 15th official, but Texas gets the last official visit on the 20th through 22nd. Now, that's because Georgia His big visit weekend is May 30th through June 2nd, to be clear. But interesting there, arguably the 2 top-ranked tight ends in the country, Mark Bowman, Caden Prothro, have 3 of the same official visits. That's Texas, Georgia, and Alabama. So it'll be interesting to see which way those recruitments go. Then you have Luke Sorensen out of Anaheim Servite. He may visit Texas. I think that depends. He's got Nebraska or Texas for June 20th. He's got A&M. He's got Miami scheduled as well. Then you have Hezzy Kent out of Brunswick. Texas hasn't recruited many guys from Brunswick, Georgia, Brunswick High. And this kid's more of an athlete. He's 6'5", 280. He wants to be a big tight end. Will he grow into an offensive lineman? Some people think so. But look, he has got Florida, who some people consider the favorite, May 30th through June 2nd. Miami, June 6th through 8th. Texas, the 13th through 20th. Alabama, the 20th through 22nd. So will he leave the state of Georgia? Right now, the bet is he will. Question is, how far will he go from Brunswick? Because when Florida Gators are good, they have success in that Brunswick and Savannah area. And we'll see there also positionally. If Texas was to take a 2 tight end class, let's just say they got either Bowman or Prothro. A second tight end could be that jumbo guy like Hezzy Kent. If he stays at tight end, he does. If he ends up at offensive line long-term, he does that too. Just something to keep in mind there.
Jerry, any chance you could see somebody popping up during the spring evaluation period? I know that's your favorite time of the year. Coaches will be out. Or you think the board's pretty much set right now?
I think Jeff Banks saw his guys in January. He went to Illinois, Chicago area to see J.C. Anderson. They did offer the kid up in the Dakotas, right? Mm-hmm. So that one could be a possibility if Jeff Banks goes back up there in May and really likes the kid. But I think the board is pretty much set. But with Jeff Banks he's still got time on the road here in May, and if he gets them in the Dakotas and they really like the kid they offered there in late January, then all bets are off. But he went to see J.C. Anderson. He's gone to see some other guys. So it looks like there may be room for one more name to pop up that's not on the radar right now. But right now, even J.C. Anderson doesn't have an official visit set.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. We'll have more here on the channel, so stay locked in. Obviously, more at ontexasfootball.com. Use that promo code OTFOG. $49.95 will get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com. That like Jerry mentioned, that big unofficial visit weekend coming up on the 12th. June official visits will be here before you know it. So plenty going on the website. Again, OTFOG is the promo code that you want to get 1 year of access for $49.95 at ontexasfootball.com. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Jeff Howe. And until next time, hook 'em.